Good afternoon. I'm Frosty Walker, Chief Information Security Officer, Texas Education Agency. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the first webinar of our Spring 2018 series regarding cybersecurity. Today we'll discuss cybersecurity and privacy awareness programs, what they are, and why we need them. We hope you'll find these informative. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. Should you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to submit them and we'll get them queued up for the Q&A session. And if someone would just drop me a note to make sure that that you're able to see the screen and hear my audible okay, I would appreciate that very much. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about today. Let me double check my audio. See here and get a signal that it's cutting out a little bit. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about data security, the Data Security Advisory Committee. We do have a committee in place that provides guidance to the Texas education communities, maximizing collaboration and communication regarding information security issues and resources which can be utilized within the educational communities. The DSAC is currently comprised of representatives that are from school districts, ESCs, TEA, and the private sector. I'm still getting a couple of indications that the audio is intermittent. I'll see what else I might configure. If y'all hold on just a second. Okay, I'm going to see if I can turn my microphone up just a little bit. Hold on just a second. I apologize for this inconvenience. I'm not seeing anything indicating to me that we're having sound problem. Hold on just a moment. Now, I apologize. I'm not seeing anything that would indicate why we may be having a problem today. If the audio continues to be poor, we will I will check the recording, and if the audio is poor, we'll reboot my computer and re-record that to put this presentation out for everybody. I apologize for the audio on this. I was talking about the Data Security Advisory Committee that consists of school districts, ESC, TEA, and the private sector. It is diverse in both size and geographically across Texas, with members who are willing to share their needs and ideas and time to hopefully provide solutions to everyday cybersecurity issues within the education community. I want to thank everybody that participates on that committee for me. And I also want to take the time and opportunity to thank everybody that's giving us their time today for this presentation. I know everybody's time is valuable. Please Please bear with us. It looks like the audio says it was unconnected and reconnected, so hopefully it has improved. The webinar today will be recorded and will be posted under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools at our Texas Gateway portal, which is https://www.texasgateway.org under Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. If you browse to that URL, you will see featured resources, and in the middle of the page, you will see Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. And that is where you will find recordings of all the webinars, as well as other resources that we've posted out there and shared with the community as well. One of the things when we talk about cybersecurity awareness programs and privacy security awareness, we'll talk a little bit about data breaches and who may be involved. So if we take a look at the Verizon 2017 DBIR, the Data Breach Investigative Report that Verizon puts out every year, we'll see some interesting statistics. If you're not familiar with the DBIR, that is put out annually by Verizon, has been for the last 15 years. Their forensics team, anytime they're called in to investigate a potential breach, they begin documenting information. And then if it turns in that it is a breach, they continue to document that information, and they publish information that is anomalized to give us a little clearer view of what might be occurring in those breaches. So you can download that. You can find it just by Googling Verizon DBIR. The first thing that we want to look at today is that they say that and breaches that occurred in 2016, which was reported in 2017, were 75% were perpetrated by outsiders. 25% involved internal actors. And when we say involved internal actors, that would indicate that it wasn't somebody that was necessarily just being malicious, but it could be someone that has potentially created a configuration error or caused something that would allow an exposure of data, or it could be as simple as a user clicking on a spear phishing or a phishing attack, a bad link in an email that then allowed a malicious software to be loaded up and then spread across the network. So when it says involved, it doesn't mean that it was just someone malicious. It could have been by error or just as simple as clicking on an email. 18% of the breaches were conducted by state affiliated actors. We see a lot today in the news about state affiliated actors. There's a lot of speculation of whether the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, multitudes of state-affiliated actors could be involved in different types of breaches. One of the lower statistics is only 3% involve multiple parties. So that means that only 3% involve, say, outsiders and state-affiliated actors working together to cause a breach. Only 2% involve partners. And a lot of times we wonder what is a partner and why. What is a partner and how could they be involved? A lot of times, for example, we outsource something to be put in the cloud. Therefore, we are partnering with that company, and if we're storing sensitive information out there, and that company also has partners that are involved in providing those services for you. So that is saying that only 2% involved partners where you with the partners. The last statistic is one that draws quite an alarm to me. 51% of the involved organized criminal groups. So 51% involved organized criminal activity. If we look a little further into that report, in the public sector, which includes states, state agencies, schools, counties, city, municipalities, in the 2017 report, almost 40% of the data breaches involved internal actors. That's a tremendous increase. Almost half of the breaches involved in the public sector involved someone that clicked on a link, could have been a malicious actor, or made a mistake. So we see that almost half in the public sector involved internal actors. So why would we think that schools would be a target? Well, according to the Chief Operating Officer of the Global Cyber Alliance, if bad actors can access student personal data, that information can be exploited for the purpose of fraud or committing crimes for years before it's detected. Many of us that have potentially had our IDs stolen or know someone that's had that process happen, typically able to detect that as an adult within 3 to 6 months. But with student data, that data can be accessed potentially for years before it's detected. And that often isn't not detected until a student gets a job or goes to a higher education, checking their social security numbers. So that is why this becomes such valued information, particularly for organized crime. They sell this type of information and they're able to get a higher price for it on the dark web because of the length of time that it can be potentially used to commit fraud or crimes. So I want to take a look today a little bit about some of the data that we actually do have, and why we may need to protect that. So we're going to, first of all, we're going to look at students. We're going to take a look at FERPA. And FERPA defines personally identifiable information to include student names, names of the student parent, or other family members, the address of the student's family, a personal identifier such as social security number, student number, biometric record, or other indirect identifiers such as date of birth, place of birth, mother's maiden name, or other information that alone or in combination is linked to a specific student that would allow someone, a reasonable person within the school community, to identify that student within a reasonable certainty. It also identifies as personal identifiable information contained in student and education records. Education records means a record, a file, documents, or other materials that contain information directly related to a student that are maintained by an education agency or an institution. Student data continued. FERPA continues to define, we talk about directory information. So a school district is permitted to designate certain information about students as directory information that is publicly available. However, a parent or eligible student must be given the opportunity to opt out of directory information. Directory information may contain the student's name, address, telephone number, email address, photograph, date and place of birth, grade level, enrollment status, dates of attendance, participation in recognized activities and sports, honor and awards that might be received. It also defines individual student performance on academic skills assessment instruments, such as tests, are confidential and may only be released in accordance to FERPA. So that gives us a little bit of information about all of the data that is potentially sensitive or personal as defined for the students. In addition to that, we also have our educators in our district and our employees. And under Texas Education Code, the results, whether that be numeric score or pass-fail of education certification exams, is confidential. A document evaluating the performance of a teacher or administrator is classified as confidential. Also, criminal history record information must not be disclosed except for under certain circumstances. And the Texas Government Code provides that home address and phone number, emergency contact information, social security number, information that reveals where the individual family has members is excluded for public disclosure if the employee of the government body elects to withhold such information. So just like parents or eligible students have the option to withhold directory information, our employees and educators also have the option to do that as well. In addition to that, for educators and district employees, the names of an applicant for the position of a superintendent of a school district is excluded from public disclosure, except the Board of Trustees must give public notice of the name or names of the finalists being considered at least 21 days before the date of a meeting in which is a final action or vote is going to be taken. Additionally, informers' name or information that would be subsequently reveal the identity of an informer is excluded from public disclosure. And an informer is defined as a student or former student or an employee or a former employee of a school district who has furnished a report to other person or persons possible violation of criminal or civil and regulatory law to the school district or the proper regulatory enforcement authority. So someone that informs about potential information, that name of that person and the information is excluded from public disclosure and is considered to be confidential. Also, we have credit card, debit card, access device number, could be a card, a code, account number, used to obtain money, goods, or services is confidential. So as you can see, from our student data to our educators and to our employees, we have a lot of data that is considered either confidential or may not be, depending on the parent or the eligible student or the employee and how they want that data treated. Some more data that is classified as confidential that we don't talk about very much has to do with cybersecurity and the posture of your computer networks and security. The following information is confidential: a computer network vulnerability report, an assessment to the extent of which data processing operations a computer program, a network, a system or system interface or software of a government body or a contractor is vulnerable to, that may be vulnerable to unauthorized access or harm, or any critical information that is vulnerable to altercation, damage, erasure, or inappropriate use of that information. So a lot of times when we're talking about cybersecurity posture in our data systems and our networks and our data servers, we often don't think about that data as being potentially confidential. But by state statute, it actually is and should not be disclosed under Section 552.139. So now that we've talked a little bit about all of the data that we have that may potentially be number one, confidential and may be of value to outside organizations that could profit from collecting that information. Let's look and see what Texas law says about how we should protect that data. And we've gone through several slides talking about what we should protect. We have one sentence here that tells us how we should protect that. A business shall implement and maintain reasonable procedures, including taking appropriate corrective action to protect from unlawful use or disclosure any sensitive personal information collected or maintained. I actually kind of like that because we have the leeway here to try to define what is reasonable procedures. We could put a group of people together at a table and we could argue for months about what is reasonable procedures, but that does allow us as business people to have some leeway as to how we actually protect the data that we have. So now that we've talked about the data and how we're supposed to protect it, let's talk just a little bit about if something were to happen and what is required by state law if we have a breach of system security. And that is defined as unauthorized acquisition of computerized data that compromises the security, the confidentiality, or the integrity of sensitive personal information maintained by a person, including data that is encrypted if the person accessing the data has the key required to decrypt the data. And we're going to talk a little bit about that last sentence, because that last sentence, when we talk about including data that is encrypted, if the person accessing the data has the key. So what happens if we have data that's encrypted, but we do not have reasonable belief that the person that has possession of that has the key? We may not be required under state law to disclose, to notify each individual. We would still probably notify. An example of that be that, for example, a laptop that is encrypted that was potentially left or stolen out of someone's car, out of their possession. If that was encrypted and we have no reasonable belief that they have the key to access that information, we may not, under state law, be required to do notification of a breach. Now, that further goes on to talk about business in the state or owners and licensed the data that includes sensitive information shall disclose any breach of system security after discovering or receiving notification of the breach to any individuals whose sensitive information was or is reasonably believed to have been acquired by an unauthorized person. So basically what that's saying is if we may not be 100% sure that someone is has accessed that, someone unauthorized person has accessed that data, we still are probably going to have to notify, again, unless that data is encrypted. Now, a couple of years ago, I was speaking at a conference, and I was on a panel of about 4 different people, and we were talking about outsourcing and, excuse me, about things that we potentially could outsource and what we might be looking at moving to the cloud. And after the presentation was concluded and we had a question and answer period, the gentleman in the back of the room stood up and waited patiently for a microphone. And then he identified himself. I'm John Kill, the Texas State Auditor. And I just want to remind everyone here that you can outsource everything except responsibility. And that quote has stuck with me for years. And I understand that while we often try to think, oh, we can outsource all of these different things, ultimately the responsibility of providing reasonable procedures to protect the information that we have still is our responsibility. So I want to talk just a little bit about the cost of a breach. In 2017, the United States cost per record breach, according to research conducted by Ponyman Institute, and Ponyman Institute is the leader in this type of research, and they put out an annual report. Again, you can look up Google Ponyman Institute on the internet, and you'll find that this is what they specialize in. And they say that the cost in a breach is $265 per record for records that are potentially exposed. And in that, they include direct expenses such as engaging forensics experts, outsourcing hotline support, providing free credit monitoring subscriptions and discounts for future products and services, and then also indirect costs such as in-house investigations and communications, as well as value of customer loss resulting from lack of confidence in customers, in our case, citizens of Texas that could potentially lose confidence in how we're protecting their data and their information. So that comes out about in September of every year. So if you're interested in looking up at the Ponyman Institute, they produce that every year as well. So again, we've talked just a little bit about some of the reasons why we may need to try to protect and provide reasonable procedures. And so we'll now talk a little bit about what would be included in a successful cybersecurity awareness training program. And we can talk about social engineering. We can talk about email phishing, spear phishing, which is a very pointed, direct type of attack. Messaging. Talk about internet browsing. Talk about social networks such as Facebook, LinkedIn. There's a variety of those. Also like to include in that cyber awareness mobile device security. And many of the school districts that I'm aware of have a bring your own device, BYOD, that allows them to bring their own personal device and potentially maybe accessing information off of that. And how do we provide mobile device security for those devices, even when they're bring your own device? Talk about passwords. We talk about encryption. We want to talk about data security. Again, we want to talk about how we provide security on the data that we're trying to protect. And we also want to talk about data destruction. While we often talk about hard copying, we use shredders or we use shred bins that data can be collected on. Electronic data is very similar in the fact that we have to shred or destroy that data where it's not readable any longer. And so I think that's important in the cybersecurity awareness training to include information about data destruction, particularly to those folks that are in your IT shops, but also in addition to your users that may have hard copy of that data. And of course, we want to talk about insider threats. So what should be included in privacy awareness? And some people say, well, what's the difference between cybersecurity awareness? And cybersecurity awareness includes all those things that we talked about email and phishing and social networks, whereas privacy awareness concentrates more on the types of data that we feel is classified as sensitive, confidential, or needs protection. It deals with the privacy of that data and how we protect it. And again, I include data security and data destruction in that piece of the privacy awareness. Who should receive cybersecurity awareness training? Well, I personally feel that everyone who may have access to sensitive information, uh, administration, staff, contractors, interns, students, and vendors. And you go, wait a minute, I don't want to be in the business of providing awareness training to my vendors. And you're absolutely correct. But the way that you do that is in your contracts with your vendors, where you specify that they need to have any of their employees that may be working with your data should take an annual cybersecurity and privacy awareness training. And then that helps you cover that with your vendors. When should you have cybersecurity and privacy awareness training? Well, I like to have it at the new employee orientation briefing, just about 5 to 10 minutes when we have a new employee briefing. Either myself or one of my security analysts goes down and gives a brief talk about cybersecurity and privacy awareness. And then we ask all of our new employees to complete a online training class within the first 30 days of their start date. And excuse me. After that, we ask them to take that annually. And you may say, well, if people take the same training over and over, they know all the answers, correct? Well, depending on the vendors or how you're delivering that, there are different modules that you can. I review modules every year. The vendor that we happen to use provides us with about 40 different modules that are 2 to 3 minutes in length each. And we pick about 20 of those modules that we present then to our users that equal about an hour's worth of training. And we can rotate those modules out so that they're not looking at the same data over and over. We talk a little bit about the components that we've already briefly touched on. I like to have a new employee orientation briefing. I do use a computer-based training. There is computer-based training that is free. There is computer-based training that are sold by vendors that there is a charge for. And then we also do instructor-led training. From time to time, our auditors may come in and they may say, for an example, we were working with a group of people down, somewhere, and we noticed that there was a hard copy on their desk that had potential information, and we need to be sure that we can you and your team create a training on how to properly handle and lock up hard copy and how we destroyed hard copy. And I say, absolutely, we can do that. We put together training on mobile devices, email, all types of different training. And we offer somewhere between 3 to 5 different instructor-led training classes a year that may consist of several classes on each one of those. But it just depends. We put that together trying to meet more of our customer needs. So I want to talk just a little bit about security awareness vendors. I'm going to name 3 here. There are a lot of vendors out there. Secure the Human, Know Before, and Wombat are all reputable vendors that supply awareness training, and they include modules on cybersecurity as well as privacy with those. Uh, I would say that the cost of computer training with an educational discount is probably going to be somewhere in the range of about $5 per employee, which is very low cost when we're talking about delivering this type of training that we think is very important. However, sometimes your budget is a little bit below, they're strained, and so there is free cybersecurity training on Cybrary. That's https://www.cybray.it. And if you go to our Texas Gateway portal, you will see a lot of references to Cyber, but it has several different modules on cybersecurity and privacy awareness. Uh, for our educators, Google provides a link for Ed Training Center with google.com/digital space citizenship, and there's a preview under that. Um, um, these URLs will be available with the slides when we publish this we'll get that published here in the next couple of days. In addition to that, there is elementary student training provided by Google that is https://being internet awesome with google.com, and that is for our younger students, and it has a game of how they can play with different characters on different, I think, like islands, to keep them interesting and teaching them internet security. So with those thoughts, we're gonna open up questions today. Again, I do apologize for the audible, and I'm sure when we go back and listen to this, we'll re-record this. We'll go through and see if we can figure out why we had poor audible today. We did a test on this yesterday, and everything was fine. So, but that's the way the computer business is from time to time. So, if you have questions, please please let us know, and we'll see if we can answer them. And we'll see here. Yes, so a question has come in. There will be a copy of the PowerPoint available on the texasgateway.org under cybersecurity tips and tools, along with a recording of the webinar. So all of this information will be available in the next 48 hours for anybody that would like that. There's a question here that is cybersecurity awareness and trainings. Is that included in DSA? I'll do some research on that. I don't know that I can answer that right off, but we'll provide an answer for that question and any others that we don't have the opportunity to get to here shortly. But we'll include that and document that on the texasgateway.org portal as well. Looks like we had a couple of questions regarding DSA, and I'll do some research on that and seeing if there's anything else. Okay, go back and see if we have any other questions here. Depending on the question that's coming in about how much do I save per teacher, I estimate that cost at around $5 an individual. and most of the vendors with an educational discount. Um, some vendors, they're considerably higher when you look at their retail, but they typically offer a very deep discount for educational services. So um, I think you can get that for somewhere around that ballpark, around $5 per individual. And there is a question that's come up here about talk a little bit about data protection and what we're working on there. And I will say that we're working with several of the school districts on a data protection agreement that could be used universally across all the educational community in Texas. And we're looking at including such things as we talk about uh, you know contract negotiation with vendors to include cybersecurity awareness training for all the employees that touch your data. That is something that would be included in those contracts that we would have available. Um, and I think that project, the data privacy agreement, is a tremendous agreement that we could would benefit everybody. And um, with the progress that's being made on that, I'm hoping that we have that out before the beginning of the 2019 school year or 2018 school year in September 2018. So that would be, so I think that would be a big help in all the negotiating. In fact, we're going to do a webinar. I think we're scheduled to do a webinar in May about that data privacy agreement. You have another question? Um, and there's a question about CJIS information or criminal and justice information, and DPS has a security training, awareness training. I don't know if that's available for schools. I can check with DPS on that, but as many of y'all know, if your school district has a police department or law enforcement, you may indeed have CJIS records that, and we didn't talk about CJIS today as sensitive information, other than the fact that we said that criminal justice records are classified and only can be released under certain stipulation, but those are considered sensitive, and they do have a federal regulation as to how those are supposed to be protected as well. So if you do have law enforcement involved with your school district, you may want to contact me offline, and we can talk about some CJIS requirements if you want to. Looking through other questions here. Give me just a moment. I see that FBISD says they're happy to share their data privacy agreement. We appreciate that, Kobe. Thank you very much. I will document that. We'll reach out to you. Thank you very much for that. Had a question about data breach insurance. I know there are a lot of schools that have data breach insurance. I personally think that that's of value. There are organizations out there that they work with a lot of the school districts that are selling data breach insurance. Um, I think that's just another tool that you can use that should you have a breach, that helps offset that cost of $265 per record. Um, so I do think that many of the schools are taking advantage of that, and I think that's a worthwhile program, depending on the cost of that these days. But I do think that there is value, particularly for school districts, that it's difficult if you have a breach of 1,000 or more records trying to come up and cover those costs. So I think that's a very good thing. That's kind of like buying car insurance. I think that's something that I would suggest you take a look at. Someone has asked me what tab will the PowerPoint be located at. It will be under Cybersecurity, Cybersecurity Tips and Tools. On that page is the folder that's located, or featured resources. Okay. Um, okay. Let's see. Got one more coming in here. Looks like. Okay. Had a question that I may want to weigh on the value of a dedicated information security specialist or officer for the schools. Um, uh, I um, I understand that budgets are difficult, but I do think that this is a critical issue that that, that that all the school districts need to take a look at. That um, they may need to look at having a dedicated information security officer or advisor. Smaller districts may be able we're working with the regional centers, um, and getting their cybersecurity posture up to a desired level, and they are concentrating on bringing in information security officers for. Some of them have created a consortium where they have one, and I, we've talked just briefly a little bit to the regional centers about maybe providing some services to take a look at the information security posture at school districts, and how the school districts can work with that. So I think there is definitely there's room for improvement there, and having a dedicated person, or potentially negotiating with an ESC or someone that can provide some type of ability to help you do assessments and try to figure out where your security is and and develop a roadmap of how to improve that. Okay. We talked about when unique ID was fully implemented, and when will unique ID be fully implemented and TEA no longer require transmission of student and teacher SSNs? And the problem that we run into from the schools, everybody uses unique ID, and we theoretically we could eliminate social security numbers. However, when we're dealing with other agencies, Texas Workforce Commission, the Department of Agriculture, they're still using Social Security numbers as an identifier for those students and teachers. So until we get that resolved with other agencies, we're still going to have to collect that information, unfortunately. And we've tried and tried to get that resolved, and hopefully we're making progress with that. But that's the reason why that we still have to collect that. Dealing with the schools themselves, y'all have been great. You've been able to implement student ID, but when we still have to have SSN to help identify those individuals when we're sharing information with some of our other departments that we're required by federal law to share with. I've been asked to show the first slide again. Let's see if I can get back there so it has all the information, my contact information, and there's my contact information, frosty.walker@tea.texas.gov, and my phone number is 512-463-5095. So that'll allow all of you, anybody that wants to get a screenshot of that. I will also, Texas Gateway. You can take a screenshot of that the URL for the Texas Gateway. Yes, someone made a comment that yes, TEA should have more influence under other agencies, and yes, we are trying to influence them on that. That is not an issue with school districts, but at some point in time, we still are having to collect that at least once for all of those, even though we're using unique ID, unfortunately, and until we get that resolved with the other agencies. That's going to be an issue, but that is something that we are working on, and we work with Health and Human Resources or Health and Human Services, Texas Workforce, Department of Agriculture. I know all of those still use SSN for help identify individuals. Well, I'll give a minute here for anyone to provide any more questions. I'm going to also show a screenshot because you had people asking about the folder in which has all of that information. We really do have a wealth of information provided out there under that in that portal that's available for any of our educational community. So I haven't looked at the usage in that in a while, but the last time I looked, we were very impressed. And again, I can just say thank everybody for their time for attending these webinars. We're excited that we have such a great attendance on these from the school districts and the ESCs and all of our educational community. So we appreciate that very much. Thank you again for your time. We're going to look here and see if we got one more question in here. Yeah, it's a comment coming in indicating that school districts need to get with their legal department and their risk management department in tune with information security and cyber security risk. Talking specifically about one of the school districts, and we'll include this information has both departments as well as the PD, and they're all very well tuned in. And that certainly indicates to me that when we see everybody working together and we have great support from the leadership on cybersecurity and protecting the assets that have been shared with us by the citizens of Texas, I think that's a great thing. So, thank you very much. We'll include that as part of the comments. So, again, thank you very much. We'll wait here for about another 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to we'll wrap all of this up. And again, thank you for your time. Looks like we do have one more question that's come in. Let me see. Okay, so it's a comment saying that they hope that more resources from TEA regarding information security, like third-party contract templates and things like that. That's what we're working on. We're trying to share that with all the education community. We know that everybody has different needs, so that we're trying to provide a variety of solutions on how you can work with and work around some of your cybersecurity issues, and but not everyone has there's not one template fits every need. So we're trying to provide multiple solutions to work with that. Had the question that will this webinar be offered again, and it will be offered available at any time, again on the texasgateway.org under cybersecurity data and cybersecurity tips and tools, and that'll be available at any time as a recording, so you can take a look at the slides as well as the presentation today. So I appreciate that very much. With that, we're going to wrap this up today. And again, thank you for your time. We'll document all of these questions, and we'll put answers out there also on the texasgateway.org website under cybersecurity tips and tools. Thank you all very much. Y'all have a great day. We'll look forward to meeting you all in the near future. Thank you.